Beginning last week, the dates of August 23rd and 24th were 2 days in the projected synoptic setup for this week that caught my attention. Strong sustained northwest flow from upper levels down past the mid-levels were going to be over top southern Ontario for several consecutive days, and pattern recognition piqued my interest. This meant that the area was primed for any shortwave troughs embedded inside that flow to have the shear necessary for storm organization. The only real question marks remaining for this period were whether or not there was going to be available LNG that southern Ontario could use. You'll see in the background graphics here that a lot of the available energy, especially on the Thursday, did arrive around 8 p.m. as storms had fired further to the northwest, and we're going to track right into it. And you can see in this background video here, the storms exploded, especially with prolific lightning once it did. As you saw earlier in one of the graphics, I wrote an extensive blog post breaking down the meteorology of the event, which I'll leave a link to in the description if you're curious. But the summary version of it is that the surface energy was going to remain largely in far southwest Ontario, but there would be energy aloft, non-surface based energy that is, that was going to cover a large swath of southern Ontario, including us, as you can see in this shelf cloud embedded in the lightning that was really scraping the ground, so you know it had some surface level energy here. This Thursday in particular, the 24th, was the day I had most interested in for us as this storm came through. The Wednesday itself had a prolific rain-producing event for parts of southwest Ontario, where some areas are pushing over 200 millimeters of rain in less than a 24-hour period. In general, the day started unassuming. Morning weather models actually were extremely inconsistent about whether or not the GTA or Hamilton would see anything at all. But I was in particularly skeptical about this, because a pretty strong shortwave was coming through and a very strong 700 millibar mid-level jet was going to be the source of forcing to kick storms off. And when I saw it was there the whole day and it wasn't going to change, I figured that would be enough to kick storms off, and sure enough it was. And it had more energy than anticipated aloft in the area here, as you're seeing when it hit the Hamilton area. In one of the maps I included earlier, at 6:30 or so, I had my answer on the visible satellite where storms pretty much started to explode everywhere, which included Chicago, the state of Michigan, southwest Ontario, and the key for us was Lake Huron, off the coast of Lake Huron, because storms were going to be going from the northwest to southeast directly to us, which is what happened. The storms kicked up quick and traveled to the southeast. They weren't that strong until they met that edge of elevated energy like I had mentioned earlier. Once the storms hit that, they exploded. Lightning kicked up. The radar, they just erupted on a radar and visible satellite. They arrived in town around 9 o'clock and really picked up around 9:30. As you see here, this is the backcountry roads just to the east of the city of Hamilton that I was taking. You can see quite notable crosswinds and just basically strobe lightning. You saw the shelf cloud that was hugging the ground earlier. There were wind reports from this event too, from Hamilton Airport, that exceeded 90 kilometers an hour, and that's not bad for a storm that really didn't have much surface-based energy to really kick it off. And had there been more surface-based energy, I think this storm would have been a major prolific wind producer. You would have heard a lot more damage reports, similar to what happened in southwest Ontario, where they did have that energy there, and into Michigan, where they reported far more prolific wind damage. You'll see in the rest of this video here, which I'll include for you here, it's going to be a lot of strobe lightning. The wind and rain picks up quite intense as I continue to drive further west here into the city of Hamilton, and you'll be left with strobe lightning. So if you're from a country or an area that's not familiar with strobe lightning, you're going to be in for a treat in the rest of the footage. And toward the end, I have a short time lapse and a bunch of moments where I get, well, what I could out of cloud to ground lightning. But these events aren't typically big cloud to ground lightning producers inside. The cloud to grounds happen inside the precipitation, so you don't get to see them as much. That's just the way it is in Ontario. But it's still pretty good for what that was a pretty rough portion of the drive. And those high beams on the other side, brutal. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. It's the lightning is quite prolific. You'll see some cloud-to-ground bolts in there, and you'll see me setting up my time-lapse with all this lightning surrounding behind me. It's pretty good. Enjoy the rest of the video.